Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. Where there are Sasquatch sightings, that's where we're gonna go. With so many chilling encounters just waiting to be retold. So join us here in the spooky woods for the Duke Chat Show.
The Duke's Roundtable. For the first time ever, we're having a roundtable discussion, and the Duke's Roundtable has very, very highly regarded, in my eyes anyway, guests, and I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say. And one of the guests that we are having on here, both of them have been on previous shows and multiple shows. One of them is Dave the Deliverer, and the other one is Kat Hansen. And we are going to be discussing how, if you think you're interacting with a Bigfoot or there's a Bigfoot nearby or something like that, how can you tell if it's actually a Bigfoot and not something else pretending to be a Bigfoot? And that's the topic of discussion for the first Duke's Roundtable. And with that, let me welcome my guests. First off, Kat Hansen. Welcome, Kat.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to have you on, dear. And our second guest for this roundtable discussion, very happy to have him back here. He's been gone for a while. Dave the Deliverer. Welcome back to the show, Dave.
Thank you. Don't hug the Wookiees.
Yeah, Kevin got to say that last time. He really wanted to say don't hug the Wookiees, so he got to say that one. But anyway, yeah, like I said, the topic of discussion here is if you think that you got something around your property, something swiping the food out of your trash can maybe, or taking stuff from around the property and making it disappear, rapping on the house in the middle of the night, you're hearing weird voices, any of this kind of stuff, you haven't actually seen anything maybe, and you're not really sure what you're dealing with. How can you tell if you're dealing with a flesh and blood Bigfoot, or maybe if it's something else? So who wants to go first on this one?
I think we should let Dave go because he can explain a lot, lay down like the groundwork here, and then we can go from there.
Okay. Well, we'll do that. And first off, before Dave gets started here, to let anybody who hasn't heard him in the past know, Dave has a background in, he is specifically, what he does is throws demons into the bottomless pit. That's what he does. And Kat, as many of you know, is on sort of the other side of the spectrum, where she's been brought up knowing all about these cryptids and been trained to deal with them and having connection and interaction with them from the standpoint of the Native American community and their traditions. So I thought it would be fun and get each of them's take on the same topic. And if we're going to start out with Dave, why don't you give us some background from the biblical standpoint on one of the things associated with this is portals. You want to talk about portals a little bit?
Sure. Well, to begin with, we do emotional healing and then deliverance, because if you do deliverance first, they just come back.
Right.
Because it's all about darkness. And that's kind of what we're talking about today is darkness. Emotional darkness draws to spiritual darkness. And unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that comes through the portals, Kat and I are kind of in agreement that at times things that have physical bodies go in and out of those portals. And there are the negative things that attach to them and come in and out. And so I know that there are a lot of Christians that don't really understand this stuff, and I kind of wanted to hit it from a biblical basis to begin with. There's portals in the Bible, folks. There's a place called Mount Hermon, And that's where we know that's a portal from the book of Enoch, because that's where the Watchers came down. It's a portal to heaven. And then if you go to your story of Elijah going to heaven in a chariot of fire, he and Elisha made a journey to where he got to the point where he was going to be taken up to heaven. And we know it was a long journey, and Israel just wasn't that wide. They could have gotten there just about anywhere in a day or so. So a couple days. So this long journey was most likely north, and most likely to a place called Bashan. And Bashan is Mount Hermon. And there's a lot of us that have done some research, a few of us have done some research on this, and most of us agree that the place he was taken up from was Mount Hermon, where he threw down his mantle, and Elijah got it and got the double anointing. Then we move on to Jesus and the Mount of Transfiguration. And when you look at there's something that's very peculiar in the book of Isaiah when it gives the prophecies about Jesus and about his crucifixion. It says that the bulls of Bashan surround me. The bulls of Bashan have surrounded me. The bulls of Bashan have, it mentions it over and over. And the bulls of Bashan, well, Bashan is Mount Hermon. We know that. That area is called Bashan. And the bulls of Bashan, I can't imagine a livestock causing the crucifixion of Jesus. So, without doubt, I think we can say that that's the disembodied spirits of these giants. We know from the book of Enoch that they were, their lot was to, upon their decease, they didn't have standing in, they're not heirs of salvation, they didn't have standing in hell at that time, and so they were to wander the earth as vagabonds, as unclean spirits. And the last time I was on, I talked about how we finally made the connection, because every time that Jesus encountered the demonic, and especially the demoniac at Gennesaret, the Bible says that they had unclean spirits. And, it wasn't until later they were called the demonios, demonic. And those unclean spirits, they said to Jesus, but by the way, God pronounced the judgment. They're to be vagabonds, they're to be unclean spirits until the day of final judgment. Well, when Jesus encountered the demoniac, it says, we know who you are, O Holy One of God. And they begged him not to. They said, have you come to torment us before our appointed time? So there's an appointed time. And also, they begged him not to cast them into the abyss, another name for the bottomless pit. So they knew that God had a holding cell for them. And they also knew that they had an appointed time. So when they were called unclean spirits, we finally made the connection to biblically that, hey, we can believe the book of Enoch somewhat. I know it's not a lot of the books of Enoch that are out there are not the actual whole scroll that they recovered from. That's a long story, but they got a copy of the real book, a whole scroll of the book of Enoch from the Dead Sea Scroll, from the caves at Qumran, and where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Well, right now the accepted one that gets passed around a lot has actually 3 books in it, and they can only guarantee that the first book is actually Enoch, because that's the one that they found in the caves of Qumran. Book number 2 and 3 may be later, written by somebody else under the pen name Enoch. And also, supposedly, Enoch wrote over 300 books during his lifetime. So there's a lot of books of Enoch out there that we don't have copies of. And just to back you up, one more thing, you were talking about Mount Hermon, Bashan there. That's where Og, king of Bashan, came from. The guy with a really long bed that taunted all the Israelites when they showed up and said he was going to stomp all of them, and it didn't work out that way.
He was the last of the Rephaim. Yep. But yet it turns out that the rest of the tribes that God had them wipe out, they were all descendants of him. So those, You know, like Wes Germer talks about that you know, God seems like this guy with a bad attitude, having the children of Israel wipe out these people, but those were all tribes of giants. The regular people, when they would encounter them, they'd give them an opportunity to join them, but not.
In other words, from God's standpoint, those weren't actually people.
Right.
Those were monsters.
See, that's something, folks, that we got to get square here. Just because somebody's got a language, and just because or they looked humanoid, doesn't mean they were people.
They're humans, exactly.
Correct.
See, that's where I draw the distinction, because we know from the fossil record that there were things on Earth that weren't us, that look similar to us, and they're, you know, from our definition of it, you could generally say, well, yeah, they were people. They had language, they were culture, they were bipeds, they looked something like us. Were they humans? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, so that's not what we call people. We don't call those the good old folks, you know. And so we get my chain of thought here. So the bulls of Bashan that encompassed Jesus, you know, according to the prophecy of Isaiah, a lot of us think that Jesus went to the Mount of Transfiguration, and had the visit with Moses and Elijah, where they openly discussed what he would accomplish by his decease in Matthew 17. That he was picking a fight, because according to theology, what we believe, God couldn't send Jesus and then kill him. The devil had to kill Jesus, because the devil had taken title deed to the earth from Adam, and for him to lose it, he had to kill the innocent one. And so Jesus had gone there, openly discussed what he would accomplish by his decease through that same portal, those guys coming down from heaven and or Sheol, and openly talking about that. Then we look at a second portal being in Jerusalem. Now, we call it the Ascension, but that's the same spot, folks, where all of the angelic stuff back in King David's time happened. So are there portals in the Bible? No, they're not called portals. But, you know, there's another one we could talk about, just came to mind. Jacob, who was later named Israel because he wrestled with God. He was at that site when he saw the angels of God ascending and descending upon a stairway to heaven, or a ladder to heaven. So there's a portal at that site. So portals are not something that well, let me say this to begin with. You see a portal, don't go through it. Right.
Portals aren't referenced as portals, quote unquote, in the Bible, but they're obliquely referenced, you know, if you're looking at it from that standpoint, that there's like certain areas where supernatural events tend to happen over and over again.
Yeah, and I don't think that Kat is saying that there are good things that come through the portals. I'll let you speak for yourself, but from our previous discussions and what I've heard you talk about, I don't think that anybody is saying that there's good things that come through the portals that appear today. Not to say that something couldn't, but...
Yeah, it could be that was a system that was used when the Watchers were actually active. And now
I'm not talking about the biblical portals. I'm talking about something that might pop up in Godibo, Oklahoma, or out there in western Oklahoma, or out in Arizona in the desert. You know, if something comes through a portal, if you see a portal there, you might want to run the other direction, because there may be a pterodactyl come through there, or something riding on the back of a pterodactyl he's trying to get rid of.
So I've done enough research now to find out that not all portals are just stationary, that there's ones that can move around from place to place, and there's ones that can open and then disappear again. And let's bring Kat on. Kat, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, what do I want to talk about? Well, do I want to talk about if they're stationary or they can move around?
Yeah, just elucidate a little bit more on portals, because I've heard that you know, there's ones that can like be in one place and like never open up there again. Like something can open.
Yeah, I was really appreciative of hearing you talk about the ones that can occur, you know, when the lateral lines begin to the magnetic, you know, occasionally open them.
Yeah. Thank you, because that's exactly what happens. And I always tell people, it's almost like you know, the puzzle boxes where you have to push pieces of wood through to another, you know, to another side, or pull, and then lined them all up, like a
Jenga.
Rubik's Cube. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Jenga. Something, it's like that, where things have to line up perfectly, and once it does, and it's not always the same place, or the same time, bang, you'll get the perfect condition to cause a portal to open up. I call those the randoms. Those are not fixed. And the ones that are fixed pretty much are set on plates that are pretty much stationary, take a long time to move, by just a hair's degree, and so they're still going to work to a certain extent. But
I had a question for you on the stationary ones. Do you usually find those at like nodal points on the dragon currents or ley lines where there's like lines that are crossing each other? Is that where you tend to find most of the stationary ones?
Yes, those, and the other place that I tend to find them, believe it or not, are high density thickness of quartz, the quartz crystals. And I always tell people, the first radios that we had were quartz radios, quartz crystal radios,
protruding. Yep.
So that makes perfect sense when you realize that they are just
Now, you just went over a whole lot of people's heads. So I want to paint them a picture. Let me interject. You got the first radios had tubes like the televisions did, and the dial that you went back and forth with, there was a little white deal and then a red line through it. That white deal was quartz.
Yes.
And that's what they're talking about. That would have gone over, if I hadn't already heard you, that would have gone over my head, and I would have been puzzled about that. That was literally the tuner you went up and down the dial with. It's quartz, and that's what caused those radio waves to come in. Excuse me, go ahead.
Right. No, I appreciate you doing that.
Big deposit of quartz in the ground. You've got a couple of dragon lines that cross there that are giving it energy. You've got your tuning to a certain frequency, and you've got the energy to power it.
Yeah, and he's not talking about Puff the Magic's dragon. He's talking about drag-on lines, like literally ley lines. Horizontal
ley lines, dragon lines, energy lines. There's names. All different cultures have different names.
Right. And then the frequency that's going through that.
Of course, that might be where a dragon, if it was going to appear, that might come through there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But the frequency, too, that I want people to understand that's being passed through those is the Schumann frequency. And that's the frequency of the Earth itself. This Earth has its own frequency. So it's a resonance, and it's like a resonant vibration. How when you thunk a piece of a drum, how it will sit there and resonate, and you can hear it. And if you were to place it in water, you would actually see the ripples going out from it. Well, then you pass that through these ley lines, dragon lines, whatever you want to call them, and they activate, and it's interesting to me when they do, when I find one that's shifted, when I find one that's a surprise. Those are the ones that I find interesting because they don't seem to have a set of ground rules. That's what I want to call it. And I don't mean it to sound like a pun by saying ground rules, but that's what it is. These guys are opening up where they've never opened up before, or if they have opened up, it's so far back in history that humans have no recollection of it. So when I come across
could that be a magnetic resonance in the upper atmosphere from the space boys?
Space probe. Thank you. Yeah.
Lifting the upper ionosphere with HAARP would definitely cause some sort of a conflict with that sort of thing going on.
Exactly. So
the other thing I wanted to bring up before we go any further is Kat mentioned resonance frequencies. If you guys are really interested, you can go look it up. Schumann resonance frequency, SCHUMAN resonance frequency.
And you'll find, I'm just going to throw this out there for everybody, you're going to find, if you really read the articles on it and the studies done on it, that it's actually increased. It's sped itself up. So there again, what happens when you take a magnet, and start spinning it, it creates its own field. You know, it produces a resonance field that becomes stronger and stronger, and you can actually float objects in it. There's a number of things that our scientists have practiced with these, you know, with the magnetic frequencies, and they found you'll find little neat toys out there that they sell in the stores where it's got a magnetic field on the top and a magnetic field on the bottom, and you push the little toy in between these two little clamp. It looks like a backwards C, and you can actually have your little desktop toy there where it's floating. You know, there's nothing holding it. And that's a magnetic frequency that's holding it. You know, it's created its own field.
Another thing that could be doing this, and to just extrapolate a little bit more, yes, the Earth has its own Schumann resonance frequency, but every separate thing on the Earth, like a human, for instance, has its own frequency that's almost the same as the Earth, but not quite. They're all off by just a little bit. They're all individually a little bit different. And to bring back to the analogy of the little chunk of quartz in your radio that you're using for a tuner, the Schumann resonance frequency is actually shifting. It's changing. And the only thing that I've been able to think of for this, and I'm not sure, maybe they figured it out and they're not telling us, whatever, but we are actually entering a really thick area of space, according to the Space Boys, that's got a higher than average radiation in it and higher density of matter in it, and that could be affecting the Earth and causing its resonance frequency to shift. And to put this in another light is if the space around us is causing the dial on the radio to be turning, we're getting closer to somebody else's channel, which could make it a lot easier for them to open portals and get to our channel.
Yep. Exactly. And when I was talking about, I'm going to say something, when I was talking about Space Boys, I wasn't talking about the boys at NASA. I was talking about the other Space Boys.
Well, I'm talking about the boys at NASA. That's who I call the Space Boys, but I know you're talking about the Greys.
I was talking about the actual Space Boys, and if you listen to any of the folks who've talked about that in the past, i.e. Phil Snyder or any of those other guys, the one thing that the quote-unquote aliens, and I've seen a few UFOs that ended up having U.S. Air Force markings on them.
Right.
They went by with no sound at low altitude over my house and over some places I've been. That's all. They're here for the rare earth magnets, among other things, and that every magnet that we basically have that we've ever seen are literally artificial magnets. And we're not allowed to, under some kind of agreement with these jokers, to have the rare earth magnets because that's what they're here for, and that evidently that is how their spaceships, i.e., I guess ours too, if we were to have some like theirs, that the reason they're able to move so quick is they are able to, now, who knows why they're able to turn a 90-degree turn at 45,000 miles an hour. That's another question. But it seemed to me like that might be more spiritual than physical, but whatever. But at any rate, they're definitely solid ships. The magnet is fixed, and they move the deal away from or back from the magnet that's there, and hence that's their drive, their propulsion, as well as some elevators, I hear, i.e. underground, that these things literally, you just move whatever you want to move that's affixed to your craft, either away from or toward the magnet, and it moves you quick or moves you slower. And that's the only propulsion drive that they have or need. And so these rare earth magnets, if these things are, if there's as many of them as we've been led to believe in the atmosphere, which I personally believe these are of the type that we were already talking about earlier, but these things definitely have physical ships, and if there's a bunch of those in the air and running around and all this rare earth magnet mining going on, with supposedly human beings' help, not only do I think we're in the end times, folks, but this definitely might be driving a lot of this stuff that we're seeing some of these peculiar happenstances around the world. Because if you go moving big quantities of rare earth magnets around, you're going to get some funky things happening in the ionosphere and in the atmosphere.
And then playing with HAARP, the other weird stuff they're doing, too. Now, getting back to NASA again, the space boys at NASA, not the little gray ones, but the human-looking ones. They're human, yes. Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows? Anyway, for a long time what we were talking about was just the most outrageous occult woo-woo and not to be taken seriously until our physics started getting really good here in the last couple decades. And NASA pretty much just caved in and admitted, yes, there are portals. Take it away, Kat.
No, that was my day. I was running around telling everybody, yay, yay me, because I've only been speaking on it, for 20 years, telling people and having the other people out there, the naysayers say, nope, no such thing can't happen. When in reality, it does happen, this planet is a created planet. It's planned. So it's going to have some things here that were thrown in, that we have no understanding of. But that doesn't mean that we can't gain understanding of, So when
at least understand that that's what is causing some of the weird anomalies and these portals opening and closing.
Yes, people need to be aware
even
of that.
if we don't try to understand the physics of it,
Right. And before we go any further here, but I also throw it out there, for the naysayers that sit there and say, I can't get behind that. Well, from an educational standpoint, they can't get behind that. Well, I'm just like, no, that's not the case. The case is you're just being stubborn and you don't want to move past that. So what I was going to say, though, is this. I want to make it abundantly clear where I stand on this, okay? There are no little green, gray aliens, okay? There was a project that was done, I believe it was in the 60s, late 60s, by Dr. Hynek, and he came to the conclusion, he was steadfast in his belief that they were aliens, and by the time that he had done so much informational study and things being brought to his attention for this study, he came to the conclusion that what we were dealing with were spiritual beings. They were not aliens.
Extra-dimensional, not extraterrestrial. Right.
Okay, and I want people to understand that because there is a difference, okay? When you're dealing with the alien, like you just said, they're out there, they're alien, they're supposedly coming from different planets to us. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in those. I have a firm disbelief in them, okay? What these things are extra-dimensional, interdimensional beings, okay? I want that understood.
And they're not benign, they're malignant.
Right. Yeah, going back to our analogy of earlier, they live right here. They're from right here. They are just from a different channel on the radio dial.
Well, let me say this though, because I've talked to both of you about this. I do believe that they are on other planets. I believe that. Listen, they got to build those spaceships somewhere. Do they have the ability to go to other planets? Sure, they do. And the fact of the matter is, my Bible-believing folks, there's a whole lot of questions we can't answer. And I'll go into that in a minute about the Bible in that first chapter. There's a whole lot of weirdness, and that they totally mistranslated. And in the first 3 verses, it's enough to blow your mind. And then you take what Jesus said about, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, and that was pre-Genesis 1. Had to be, because the devil showed up in the garden. Now, he didn't get kicked out of heaven during Genesis 1. It was prior to that. Mm-hmm. So, we'll talk about that in a minute. Kat and I are kind of in agreement on that, although may have some other stuff to add. But, this is a new earth creation where everything, the earth is 6,000 years old. Nah. There's of the steadfast theologians, from Chuck Missler to Spurgeon to all these preachers, all of them were old earth, new creation. Yeah. They're creationists that believed in an old earth.
Yeah.
And all these guys, Dr. Ball and all them, I respect Dr. Ball, but he's wrong. There's no way in the world the Earth is 6,000 years old.
No,
it's more than the sun is 6,000 years old.
Right.
You know?
And I'm sorry, human foot, dinosaur tracks on top of a human foot, notwithstanding, it is what it is,
Texas trackways, gotta love them. Okay, well, before I'm sure we'll get back around to this again. Now let's get back to the main topic. Kat, you field this one first. You got something coming up to your house in the middle of the night, rapping on the walls of your house. You're seeing weird glowing eyes out in the dark and stuff like that. How can you assure yourself that it's actually a Bigfoot and it isn't some kind of demon screwing around on your property?
Well, this is what I always tell people, okay? I did an article for a magazine, an online magazine, I want to say back in like 2008, maybe 2009, and it was talking about Sasquatch and the the poltergeist effect is what I called it, because you get a lot of that, things knocking on your house, things trying to get your attention while you're doing that. To me, I want people to understand. Steyama, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them, I always just call them what they told me to call them, which is Steyama. They do knock, but they're not going to sit there and bang on your house from room to room to room to room, faster than you can run the length of your home, okay, or faster than you can open the door and come out and there's nothing there, okay? They don't do that, okay? I want people to understand this. What you will get, and there are those people out there who can back up what I'm saying, is you will get a knock, like a person knocking at your door, you'll 3 times, bang, 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 trying to have you come to them. Once you open that door up, you're going to either A, see them standing close by, or B, you're going to see their eyes, where they're hiding further back into the woods. And the reason that they do this is not because they're doing it to antagonize you. They're not doing it to, pull a prank on you. It's something that they have witnessed other humans do to make you open the door. Okay, so they're letting you know that they're there. Okay,
well,
you're not.
Let me add something. I got a friend, and his sister lives in the backcountry outside of Tampa, Florida, and her folks live with him. My friend's parents live with his sister, and she's single, and she's of the right age, and they've been banging. There's a bachelor group there. And they do bang on the house. And they don't hang around where you can see their eye shine. They're trying to get her to come outside. And they have nefarious ends to that. And it's scaring the folks and scaring her. And they don't go outside after dark. And those things come, and they have been banging, but they're banging in one spot. They're not banging up and down the sides of the house. They're banging on the side of the house he thinks to terrorize them. I think what they're trying to do is they're frustrated that she won't come out so they can grab her. And I go back to the Salyer Lake and the lady across from Salyer Lake. Everybody remembers the outlaw talking about purgatory. I live 30 miles from there. And across the street is, down 2 miles and across the street from Salyer Lake, there's a lady that they caught her outside. And the young bachelor group did. And she ended up in a mental institution. God bless her, because they got a hold of her, and I think they might have got a hold of her more than once, and she's not something she wanted. So, yes, for the troops and that, Kat, I'm in total agreement. But there's the bachelor groups, and they are ornery rascals, and they have been molesting my friend's sister's horses too. So there's a whole other line to that you can't just ignore. But go ahead, excuse me.
Well, now. Before we go any further, let's go a little bit further into this here, because now I know another example of that there was a bachelor group hanging up on the east side of Mount Sentinel at one point. One of my friends was up there elk hunting, got caught up there and with the sun going down, and his hunting partner had wandered off somewhere else, and he has really bad vision to start with. And at night, he's all but blind. And 3 of them apparently had a great time chasing him all the way down the backside of the mountain. He got very seriously hurt in the process, not directly from them, but ran right into a barbed wire fence and tore his leg to pieces. And had one of them trailing down the road until a car came around the corner, and the light started shining in his direction, and he heard it run off into the woods again. But, so if you haven't got a normal troop going, and there's these, gangbangers, problem males or, won't deal with the troop and got kicked out and they're all banding together sort of thing, you can't expect normal Bigfoot troop behavior from them. So that is a different situation.
Yeah, and if they're the young bachelor group, they're not out to kill you and eat you. They're out to molest you.
Yes.
If it's the old bachelor group and it's the springtime, they'll kill you and eat you. You better watch your back in the springtime.
Okay, Kat, your turn. Go. Comment on everything.
No problem. I just want to make that abundantly clear to people, okay? Because people say that they hear them all of a sudden bang all the way around the house. Then they will hear them on the roof. Then they'll hear them at a window, blah, 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 back and forth. And that doesn't happen that fast. They just do not do that, okay? No. That's one way to tell, okay?
And that's something we deal with the demonic, too, when people move into a new house. They'll call us up and say, I got problems over here.
And you can distinguish the demonic type rapping. One way that you can do it is because you'll hear it coming from inside the house. Where definitely they're not.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that.
Or it's kind of like that poltergeist movie, and the TV suddenly goes to fuzz, and the house begins to rumble. I've had that happen too. While I was standing there, and the front part of my body goes numb, and I'm binding and rebuking.
If you're getting weird side effects like that, you can be pretty sure it's not a Bigfoot at that point.
Exactly. Rocks being thrown at the house are one thing. Rocks appearing inside of your home, which is very common with people who say they've had. I'm going to refer to them as Bigfoot. Okay, I am not of the mind that people say, they hate that. I get 100 emails a day telling me, they hate to be called that. Well, no, they don't. They've never told me that they hate to be called that. So I'm just going to
hate it. Kevin even called him that. He said, "Look, you're Bigfoot." Yeah, I got big feet. So what?
What you're getting there with, with what I call the poltergeist is just that. Because think about the stories that you've heard about poltergeist activity. You hear about the knocking, the crazy knocking all over that side of the house, underneath the house. Inside the house, you have rock falls inside the house. Things like that. And there are many, many, many people who report that they have that with the Steyama, the Bigfoot. And it's not the case. That's one right there, automatically, no, that's not a Bigfoot.
Tell them what you told us earlier, how this works. That these things come attached to the boogers when they're Bigfoot, when they come through the portals.
Right, well, they're just like, yeah, it's their energy feeders. I just call them energy hogs, okay? They want what every single being has, and that's energy, okay? So you will get these creatures, that come through with them, and some of the Native American tribes have actually, where they have the set portals, actually have carved out what comes through those portals, and I have that in one of my videos, is the fact that you will see a footprint. It's a carved human footprint. Oh, it's huge. It's hand carved, and then right beside it is what looks like a wolf track, and that's been carved as well. And that's, for the big, dog-like creatures that follow them through. There's other things that come through, and if your listeners have ever watched my videos, you see I have many, 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 many pictures of these things. They come through. Some are just horrific looking, with the sharp teeth and the horrible eyes, and there's no mistaking what you're seeing. And they're demonic. They look demonic, and these, for lack of a better word, they're just a type of energy hog. They follow them around. They feed off of their energy. And think about that. If they can feed off a human who's puny, we are puny compared to a Steyama, think about that. This creature is 10 feet tall, Okay, imagine what his energy field looks like. You know, so they're going to follow them through from dimension to dimension to dimension through the portals. They're going to hop through with them.
Yeah, and let me as a minute.
Like a lamprey on a big fish, they attach their belly.
Can I remind you of the Zanasqua, the Bigfoot that have the glowing red eyes that do eat people?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are demon possessed. There's no doubt about it. If they eat people for a living, they got demons in them.
Sure, and
Big
to
time.
me, that I don't call those a people. When I specifically refer to Steyama as our people, I am referring to the semi-human looking ones. You know, some in the clan that look very much human. There are some that are naked, hairless. You know, almost hairless. They look like a naked hominid. I don't know how to explain them. They look like a naked caveman to me, you know, and by that I mean there's no hair on them, you know, except for on their head. It's very sparse. They don't have any eyebrows. They've got a couple tufts like where they're right above where their elbows are.
There may be some human ancestry with those too.
Yeah, exactly, and there is, according to the ones that I've dealt with. So what I'm saying is these things have the ability to feed off the energy of all beings. So they're going to go through the main source. You know, I mean, why would you get energy from a source that's sporadic and weak and can only feed you, you know, for a week when you can go to plug into like the main source, you know, which is a Sasquatch, and you know, and he's got enough food on him energy-wise to accommodate you for a month. You know, you're going to attach yourself. You're going to go to, it's like going to the store. You're going to go to the one with the best deals. So
again, like a lamprey attaching onto a huge fish, it can go along for the ride for a long time.
Exactly. So these guys follow them around, and I'm just going to say what they do. They cause holy heck. You know, they wreak havoc whenever they're around. You know, because they're not nice. You know, they're not. They don't have a reason to be nice. So they're going to do whatever they want, use whatever they want. They do not care if they cause harm and you know, chaos. So you can call them demonic if you want. You can call them soulless. You can call them, you know, evil. I don't know what to call them.
They're spirits.
Yeah, and
they're unclean spirits.
Yeah, I do not interact with those types. I do know what they are. If I'm contacted by one of them, it ends up becoming, you know, I don't want to deal with you, you know, and I shut them off. But for the most part, these beings that are vampiric almost have a good thing going, and they know it, and they know that they're coming from their dimension to our dimension, you know, and it's like a kid in a candy store because there are billions of humans here for them to feed off of.
Mm-hmm. And a whole bunch of them that encourage. Oh, it's the spirit of Uncle Joe. Oh, you know, you know, it's like the Egyptians. You know, they finally got a pharaoh who was demon possessed. They say, okay, how do we get you to come and possess all of the pharaohs?
Yeah.
Well, you build a dome building and you put an obelisk out front. Ooh.
Yep.
Let's think about that, folks.
Yeah.
See, we got a dome building with an obelisk out front. The Vatican's got a dome building with an obelisk out front. Oh, by the way, that obelisk they built, they brought it to the Vatican, and the very next pope, he went out and tried to cast the devil out of it. Hello?
Yeah, why would he do that if he didn't think that there was something there, you know?
So, you know, it's like, is this a show on woo? Well, I hate to break the news to my Bigfoot buddies, and you know, and I'm one of the few Christian guys that run around. That's willing to talk about it, and still say he's a Christian minister. I've had encounters, folks. I didn't ask for any of them, and I don't go out looking for them. The one time I took some folks over where there was supposed to be some, we had a sighting from the car. But I've never gone looking for them other than that. And the ones that sightings I had, I tried to get away as fast as possible.
Just to add a little bit more onto what Kat was saying, I think what you're trying to to put out there, dear, is when you're talking about the stammer or the Bigfoot, you're talking about what I would class as like a type 1 or a type 2. The more human-looking ones, like a face eater or a Wendigo or a Genosqua, is not a Bigfoot for your classification of them.
No, they are most definitely not. And
so they're demon possessed as far as I'm concerned.
That wouldn't surprise me. Behaviorally, they sure act
4 and
like
5
it.
and 6 and type 42 and type 78 and all those. They're all, many as there are, they get past the first 3 or 4, a couple of them, they're not from the good place.
No, they're not. And people need to be aware of that. You know, in Native American lore, we believe, in legend and lore, we believe that we do have some, we call, and for lack of a better word, we call them the ones from beyond the sun. And that's just strictly because early Native Americans didn't have the ability to say, you know, they didn't have the concept of dimension, you know. So that's what we call them. But when you see them and they're out here, you know, interacting with the other Stayama that are out here, you can definitely realize that they are human-like. You know, they look very human-like. And those are the ones that show above average intelligence. You know, people say that, you know, they're a different class altogether. Well, I want people to understand that, sure, Native Americans know about them. We've known about them for a long time, and we understand what they are. But, and here's the big but, when you get something that can interact with you and call you while you're at work, and he's up on the mountain, and he's calling you telepathically to him, no, you're not dealing with Stayama. Okay, when you get something that's going to come and sit down with you and have a confab with you and debate quantum physics with you, that's not a Bigfoot. Okay, it's not. Okay, I want people to understand this. What I refer to as the type 1s, these are very human looking, you know, the ones where people say, I couldn't shoot it because it looked too human.
Yeah, other than the fact they're 10 or 12 foot tall, the big ones, and you know, they got a size 42 shoe.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah, exactly. They look human.
And they got a scent gland, can make you puke. Other than that, but you know.
Well, we all have scent glands too. I mean, think about a prepubescent boy going through puberty. There, he makes you want to puke. You're gagging, holding that can of air out to him. Please, please, you know. Seriously, you know. I mean, they've got too many human attributes. But when you come across something else that lives out in the forest and smells perfectly clean, doesn't leave footprints.
There you go. There you just hit it right there. When you get something banging on your house and you come out and there's no footprints,
yeah,
that may not be a Bigfoot. There's your sign.
You got it. Yeah.
Well, it could be that you're not a tracker either. That or that you're.
Well, you got a flower bed and somebody was standing in your flower bed.
Well, but you know, like me, what if the rest of the area around your house is concrete and hard-packed gravel? So that doesn't necessarily follow. It's a case-by-case situation. But I know what you're saying, and Caveman backed you up on that too, because I sort of pinned him down on Dogman and Skinwalker, and like, how can you tell those two apart? He said, both of them can have glowing eyes. Dogman has the yellow glowing eyes.
Yellow, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
He says the difference is, though, the Skinwalker can be, like, not there at all, and you can still see his glowing eyes. There's, like, not even a body outline, nothing, just glowing eyes, and they don't leave tracks.
Exactly. You know, and what is a Skinwalker?
I'm going to tell you a secret about that. They're astral projecting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Bible says, Paul said, I knew a man 13 years ago, whether in the body or not, was caught away to heaven and saw things illegal to say. Well, that's called spirit travel. And you go places in the spirit. But the demonic, and people do it through the demonic, it's called astral projection. And my buddy was tangled with some folks that he shouldn't have, and it killed him. He had a heart attack and died. And for 2 solid weeks afterwards, I had people from the Azteca Mafia that they were working with, I guess that's who it was, I had shamans astral projecting into my house, and I look over and there's a dude standing there. And I'm binding and rebuking and binding and rebuking, and this went on for 2 solid weeks.
Yeah.
So that's called astral projectings, and that's what a lot of the skinwalkers are doing. It's witchcraft, folks.
That's exactly what it is, you know, and I think I was telling Duke that when I was on his show the last time, or maybe the time before, we were speaking about skinwalkers, and I told the story of the one in Las Vegas. You know, there is an attorney in Las Vegas who believes that deals with them exclusively. You know, he deals with the Native American tribes, and he's very familiar with skinwalkers, you know, and he's able to, he would, you know, make the divorce go through, et cetera, and he literally knew that they were going to come after him, and he told the judge what was going on, and he delivered a writ that if anything happened to him, it was a specific skinwalker that had done it, and that this man had hired this skinwalker to do it, you know. So is it real? Yes, it's real. Think about that. If you get an attorney, you know, and attorneys are real bad. You know, they're notorious for dealing with reality. You know, this is what you have. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to take. And for this man to say straight out, yeah, it's a skinwalker. He hired a skinwalker to cast the spells and do the horrible things to his wife that he's trying to divorce. You know, that tells you, yeah, he believes in it enough that he's going to deliver a writ.
And the judge does. Not to believe it.
Obviously, you know, and that's not a reservation, you know, judicial system. We're talking about
Superior Court in the city of Las Vegas, state of Nevada.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so that's pretty serious. So at some point that tells you that somewhere along the way they've dealt with enough of this that they actually understand and are believing in it. Yeah. So if you
of course, that's also the state's got Area 51, so they believe in all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You know, exactly.
Who knows how many sealed divorce proceedings they've had there?
Land of Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley.
Well, you know, when Aleister Crowley was there, why Area 51's there? Because he opened the portal.
Yep.
He opened the portal there, you know, and that's what started that place. And people don't realize
Jack
that.
Parsons, Mr. I Blew Myself Up, JPL, was the other one that was there with him.
Yep, and they don't believe. People don't understand.
Well, they're smoking a fat one in a lake of fire right now, so it doesn't.
Anyway, let's get back to the subject.
Be nice. That's too.
No, I'm just saying that there's many ways that people can determine, okay? And I want to put this out there, okay? One smell you're going to get from this Deyama, and I'm tired of people saying that it can't be demonic. Anything that comes with a sulfur smell, okay? There's your first clue, okay? You're dealing with something that is demonic, okay?
Okay, wait.
You smell the wet dog.
Before you go any further, what if you're in an area that has underground volcanically heated caves in it, and that's where the local Bigfoot are living? They're going to smell sulfury.
Yes and no, because think about that, okay? Yeah, they're going to smell sulfury. Did you get that? They're going to smell
sulfuric.
But it's not going to be to the point where they're out. You got to remember, these things don't live underground 24/7. Okay, they're out foraging, you know, and they go miles, and I'm talking miles, 80, 100 miles a day, looking for food and then coming back. Okay, these guys are great hunter-gatherers. Okay, and they move very fast because they have the muscle mass to propel them. Okay, so think about that. Okay, when you've been out and you get wet or you've got a smell on you or something and you're out in the wind and everything else, it will go away.
Yeah,
okay?
Well, all the time that I've dealt with the demonic, I've never smelled an odor, ever.
Yeah, well, I have. So I think we're kind of, that's just Duke asking me how I discern, that's how I discern. And I tell a lot of people, if you come across something that is not leaving footprints, is able to, you know, be up, down, inside your house, throwing rocks, making things appear, you know, making you feel a certain way, and then you get the sulfuric smell with it. That's not stigma. That's demonic. You're dealing with something that's demonic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I got a question. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Scott Carpenter. They said that the Bigfoot were mind speaking with them.
Yes.
And he said, ask them who Jesus is.
Right.
And they said, we're your brothers, we're this, we're that, you know, and then and you know, and we're children of God, and that, but they didn't know who Jesus was. So my question is, were they dealing with stigma, or were they dealing? There just happened to be stigma in the area, and they're Bigfoot in the area, but they're really dealing with these entities.
I believe right there that they're dealing with an entity, and for this reason. When I have read scripture at them, yelled scripture at them, they all instantaneously will stop what they're doing, and you get the mind. I call it mind speak. You get the mind speak in your brain, and it's just very faint, and you'll hear Father. You'll hear Father. Also, I have pictures, many pictures of crosses that they have left. Okay, so they do know.
Okay.
Who he is. They do know who Jesus is.
I don't
they
have
do
an
know.
opinion one way or the other, you know.
Interestingly enough, to throw in 2 cents worth from other of the guests on here, Kevin actually read a bunch of the scripture to Glag. And, you know, he didn't have any... He was equally as enraptured to listen to Kevin read, you know, something from the Bible as he was to hear Kevin read Dr. Seuss's Hop on Pop, let's just say. It had no adverse effect on him. He wasn't like fleeing for the hills going, yeah, no, and then, you know, or anything like that. He was digging it. He was totally like psyched to hear whatever it was that he was going to read to him. And if it happened to be the Bible, that was awesome too.
My point is this: there's going to the Bible for just a second. There's a way to tell, and we still need to talk about that. This is not woo. Because, folks, there are real portals. Now, a lot of the Bigfoot guys, they say, oh, I don't talk about portals. I don't talk about portals. I don't talk about portals. Well, I don't care if it puckers your nether regions, folks. They're real. Yeah. And you guys just need to buckle up and tie your shoes on tight, because this is the real stuff. But going back to the Bible tells us a real simple way. It's anyone that cannot confess Jesus Christ came in the flesh is not of God.
Yep.
When you're here in spirits.
Okay, you do this. You actually read scripture to your the group that you interact with. How do they react to it?
They're very reverent. They just sit there and listen. You know, they'll stop what they're doing and sit there. You know, it's almost like my kids tease me about it. We call it Sunday school, because that's exactly what it appears to be like. You know, they will be running around doing whatever they want, you know, at that. And then the moment that I pull out scripture and sit down and start reading, it becomes very calm, very quiet. They stop what they're doing. They will sit. I have some that'll sit up in the trees, some that'll sit behind rocks. It just depends what they're doing at the moment, you know, where they're at. And they'll listen, you know, and there again, like I just said, sometimes, not every time, but sometimes at the end of it, the next day when I come up, I will find crosses, you know, 2, 3, 4 crosses that they've made. And that's not me showing them pictures of a cross. So where are they getting the idea of a cross? That means they understood and comprehended what I was saying.
Yeah, I'll tell you, folks, I had some definite opinions at one time. The more I talk to Kat, the more I have more questions that I don't have answers for than answers. And but I'll tell you this much: Jesus said that I have sheep that you know not of. Now, I'm not saying that's Bigfoot, but I am saying it was the Choctaw. I'm part Choctaw, and you know what? The Holy Ghost through us cries out, Abba. That's
yes.
Daddy. And the what blew me away was as I began to look into my roots, the Choctaw word for God is Abba.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get that by happenstance.
No.
There's more going on here than we've been told in church, because we're listening to guys that don't have a clue. So go ahead.
not just that, and then we've also got, the scientists as well, throwing cold water on everything. And it makes for a very hostile learning environment.
I'm going to give you a little something to think about. The real scientists, they know exactly what we're talking about. They have an agenda, and it's to deny everything.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Deny.
And they know exactly what we're talking about, and they know all this is real.
Well, look at who's paying the paychecks in the academic community. Right. If you don't toe the line, your boss is going to be mad, and your boss definitely cares what you have to say.
There's two places where you have to learn how to lie. One of them is the criminals in action, the CIA, and the other is to get a PhD. You got to be able to look a guy right in the face and tell him something that's not true. If you won't think that's the truth, go talk to a cardiologist. I'll guarantee you can't believe a word them suckers say. Go ahead. I had one. Go ahead.
That's funny. No, I just want people to understand that I'm not going up there and showing them, I'm not reading like a children's Bible to them, I'm not.
Can't believe I said that. Go ahead. Sorry, cardiologist.
Duke's going to get a lot of comments from cardiologists now.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot of them listening.
My cardiologist fan base is gigantic too. Thanks for screwing it up, guys.
But what they do is they say this is the art, this is the science of medicine, and then when they screw up, they say, well, it's the art of medicine.
Well, no, that's why they're never journeymen. They're just practicing medicine because they never get it really good. Mm-hmm. Not like a carpenter.
Yeah, they practiced it.
I can't account for the anomalies that are within your body, dude. Sure, you can.
Okay, so now getting back to what we're actually talking
misdiagnosis.
about here.
Okay, go ahead.
So far we've been able to ascertain that if rocks are materializing inside of your house, and there hasn't been anybody in and out the doors or the windows, not a Bigfoot.
I really want to
noises inside the house, coming from inside the house, not a Bigfoot.
Right. Okay, and this is my other major one. Okay, and this is what I've been approached with now for the last 6 months. I get one person about every 3 weeks that's been approaching me. Apparently down south, as I'm being told, they are appearing in people's children's bedrooms. Okay? Young girls. Boom. Okay?
In the bedrooms or outside the bedrooms?
No, in the bedroom. Okay?
You might have yourself a devil.
Yeah, exactly. And when I'm telling them, no, that is not a Bigfoot. There is no way in heaven's creations can he just appear in your house just like that, eating your food, doing whatever, petting your child's head. No.
Now, if the angels of God long to look into the things concerning redemption, then we know the fallen angels, think about it, folks, the fallen angels don't understand redemption either. But they do understand fulfilled atonement. So this is what you say. You say, in the name of Jesus, whose blood atones for my sins, I bind you and I rebuke you and I cast you into the abyss and I command you to stay there. Now go. Everybody, they'll turn to the consistency of oatmeal and they will go down into the bottomless pit like you flushed oatmeal down a drain. I've seen it. Now, if they're not obeying you, then say this. In the name of Jesus, whose blood atones for my sins, I declare mine and my family's sins forgiven. I break hell's empowerment against us. I cancel all assignments, and I bind all spirits off us. Now, in the name of Jesus, whose blood atones for my sins, I bind and rebuke you all, and I command you to go into the abyss, and I command you to stay there.
I have a question for you. If you take that the first part that turns them into oatmeal there, and if they just take the recording of your voice on this show doing it, and call blast it outside the house, will that clear the local area out?
Yeah. Well,
yes.
And say in the name of Jesus, I agree.
Yes.
Okay.
You say this in Jesus' name. I agree with that recording. You bet you go.
That's all it's going to take. Okay, because I want people to understand. Because remember on my previous interviews with you, I was telling you about people who actually now are believing that what they are enacting with are going out, putting their beds out in the forest, in their backyards and everything else, trying to deal with this. I'm like, are you serious? Please stop. Because there is no way in heck that a Bigfoot, Sayama, Sasquatch, Oma, whatever you want to call him, is going to know, why you are sleeping out in his territory. Okay, he's going to take offense at that.
Welcome to my web, said the spider to the fly. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Well, and that's the best case scenario is that it actually is Bigfoot there, in which case they, probably might be not killed. The worst case scenario is that something else there, in which case they're really in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Because what I was just saying is that they're going to know that you're in their territory. That's the worst thing you're going to have to deal with here. They're going to be, what in the world are you doing invading my territory? Whereas if it's something that's not a Sasquatch, he's going to be doing just like what Dave just said. Welcome to my parlor. Let me have you at you.
Let me pour some yummy.
Here's what you got to remember now. The Janoskwa, the face eaters, the Gugways, that's the beast of seven shoots type, the Wendigos, and about half of the dogmen, they very much are demon-possessed.
Demon-possessed.
They very much have the demonic working with them.
Yep.
And if they catch you outside, they got a bottle of Grey Poupon in their back pocket, and they're going to slather you down, and you're going to go down in 3 or 4 bites.
Sure.
And if you my favorite part of Lonesome Dove was he said, "Don't fret, boys. We're all going to be bear turds tomorrow anyway."
Wait, Kat, before you go on. The other thing we can be sure of then is if they're actually carrying on mental conversations with you, it's not actually Bigfoot. They can send you a little. A thought picture for a split second, or you can hear one word sort of for a split second, and that's the very extreme limits of what they're capable of doing mentally. And the vast majority of the time, they wouldn't do that anyway.
No, not at all. And I want people to understand that the concept of what Dave just said there, you're going to end up as food. The other part of this, and I guarantee you it is the most horrific feeling that you have ever felt, because you have now opened yourself up to being a vessel, to being allowed. Okay, think about that. When are you're at your most vulnerable? It's when you're sleeping.
Right.
Okay.
And if you're not a Christian and you're out there doing that, that's a recipe to become demon-possessed.
That's it, exactly. You've just opened yourself up, and you've made yourself a vessel for these things, okay? And you're doing it, this is the kicker here, you're doing it of your own free will.
That's right.
You're inviting in. Even the Bible says that demons are wandering around in the wilderness. Durr.
Yeah, durr.
Look, the devil goes around like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour, and he's going to do it through these critters or those spirits. Those are his tools, folks. If they're man-eaters, they're working with the devil, or he's working with them. If they're of his kingdom, most assuredly he's working for them. And what you've got to realize is this, you say, well, I don't believe in God. Well, guess what? He believes in you. You believe in Bigfoot. He doesn't. I don't, I'll say this. Somebody that has an opinion is always at a loss when they meet somebody that's had an experience. Folks, God's real. He loves you. Jesus is real. He's alive. Yeah.
So anyway, Kat, if I'm walking through the woods and I see something that looks like a Bigfoot watching me, how can I be reasonably assured that it actually is a Bigfoot and not something else? Okay,
first and foremost, before you ever get within, I want to say 10 feet, your first step in the woods, okay?
That's too close.
Yeah, you're going to realize, okay, you've started on your journey, okay? And let's just say you're in their territory, okay? The first thing that you're probably going to hear, 9 times out of 10, are some funky bird calls, okay?
Can you do a bionic bird? Can you do I keep wanting to hear a bionic bird. Can you do a bionic bird?
I cannot.
Okay.
I cannot. I do not whistle, so not that well anyway. You're going to hear them. They have a language system and an alert system. Okay, so you're going to hear things. I've set down the way from me, I have a 400-pound chicken, a 400-pound rooster. Okay, it's a young male. He loves to pretend to be a rooster. We hear him out here usually about 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, it will turn from a 400-pound rooster into a 400-pound owl, into a dove, and then back into a rooster again, followed by his actual voice. And you will hear him talking. And it's words that you kind of understand, but you don't. You know, you're like, man, what am I hearing? That sounds familiar.
He's mimicking humans he's heard, is that right?
Exactly. Okay, so there's your first clue. Okay, so if you hear that, you can start saying to yourself, okay, I get it. Second thing, the parallel walking that people hear a lot of times. These beings tend to follow you or parallel walk with you. And the reason that they're doing that is because they're sizing up what you are. Okay, they're not dumb, okay, by any means. I want people to understand this. These guys have been around for a long time, humans for a long, long time. Okay, so they have seen us put in railroads, so that's where you get what some people call the samurai chatter, the sing-song chatter, you know, where it sounds almost like Chinese. Sure. You know why? Because they heard the Chinese workers that were brought over to put railroads in. Okay, so there's their first experience with them. Sometimes you'll hear that depending on where you're at.
So that's passed down through the generations, is that right?
Exactly. And you don't know what it means.
I can buy into that a lot easier than I could our native friends who were saying, well, down through the eons, they learned our languages and they passed that on to, and I'm going, no, wait a minute. You're in Omaha and you're from the Pacific Northwest and you're telling me that the booger in Omaha speaks Squamish or Squalotomy or whatever it is. No offense to the tribe. No offense to the tribe. And Snoqualmish, or I can't remember the tribe. I like them. So, yeah. It's Snohomish. And so if they speak Snohomish and you're over in Omaha, I don't buy that. No. To me, that's just that's woo. Okay,
that's woo. Though, interestingly enough, we did have the Chinese laborers in this area putting the railroads up here in this part of Montana, and then after they were done with that, they were mine workers in the same area around here. Well, and we still get a lot of reports of them hearing weird Chinese-sounding language and weird.
I can buy into that because the Chinese were in that area. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, but I will go back to what I've always said. I believe that they can, that the smarter ones, they can tap into something through their DNA where they can understand all the languages.
Yes. That is
through all the languages. And that tells you something right there, folks. I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want to offend anybody, especially the folks on the phone here with me, but that tells you something right there. Predate the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, we've hypothesized that before, that they actually are still speaking that they understand the proto-language that we used to speak before Babel happened. All the humans got stuck with various languages. That they still remember the original language and can speak that.
I believe that as well. I believe that as well because their language is very basic, you know, and when I say basic, I'm not saying it to be demeaning in any way, shape, or form, because it is also complicated, because it also has hand signs that go with it, you know, like our American Sign Language, okay? But I do believe that because they are very basic beings, you know? What can I say? They start out simple, you know, and they're, again, not simple-minded, but they live simply, you know? They don't have all this garbage cluttering their brains that we humans
they don't have all the weird, abstract ideas that we've come up with in our super techno culture here. They don't need words for all that kind of garbage.
No, they don't need it, you know. So if you're out and about, so you're going to, I also want people to know this as well. If you're out and you have them paralleling you, you know, people always say, well, I stop, and then they stop. I go, they go. And it freaks me out. You know what? Don't be freaked out by it. That's another thing that really gets me with people. If you're out and these things are happening to you, you need to start talking. That's what I tell people. Don't just sit there and keep letting your fear inside of you start welling up. Okay.
Well, that's awful hard. I've been hit with the infrasound, and I think they would. Had I not done the binding and rebuking that day, they'd ate me for lunch. Now I got.
Well, I've been hit with it too. You know, I've been hit with it many times, and it's not a good feeling. But at the same time, you know, when you jump into water for the first time and you're learning to swim, and
well,
you're
that's
holding
where I
your
was
breath.
at. I was in the water.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, you were floating in the water.
Yeah, you know, you're going to feel that first onrush of panic. You have to be a human being and calm yourself down. Okay,
Well,
you need to stop.
I started
and
binding
think.
and rebuking at the top of my voice.
I say this: if you're out there, start talking. And you need the reason that I say start talking, and don't just start talking about the weather or whatever. Address it directly to them. I know you're there. I know I'm in your area. I'm here for a very short time. I only want to do this while I'm here. I'm walking from point A to point B, or
there
I'm going.
You go. I told them I just want to catch the fish here, and I'll leave you a few on the bank.
That's
Maybe they'd let me
exactly right.
keep fishing.
They probably would have, to be in all seriousness. If you'd have let them
that. We're going to get free fish out of the deal. All we have to do is let him catch a few. Go.
That's right. And then we eat him too. No, it's kind of
free food.
Hell no, they're not that dumb. They'll let you come back and catch more fish for them.
They do, you know, and you do hear stories about that, you know, where people have left, you know, have gone into their territory and have left them fish, you know, when they're hunting or fishing or doing whatever, you know. And
I about left them my blazer and my waders too.
And a large deposit in the waders.
That's right.
So I'm just saying, people need to understand. Okay, red glowing eyes. You're not dealing with something that's nice. Okay, you know, people. You want things for me to tell people on how to recognize what's.
Yeah, that's an inosqua. That's the kind
well,
you take yourself with mud.
That's something Kat can clear up right here and now, because she's had decades of interaction with them, and she's seen them in all phases of attitude. And from what I'm getting from a lot of other researchers, including Rich, it seems like when they get really up, maybe more blood flow or whatever to their eyes, and they get that red eye color, but not necessarily an eye glow. Did any of the ones that you interact with ever exhibit eye glow?
The eye glow, the only ones I've ever interacted with that had eye glow were the ones that live in lava tubes, and that's in Eastern Oregon. Okay.
So pretty much what we were hypothesizing, they're underground all the time, so they develop this eye glow thing so they can see underground.
Right. And I want people also to know
but
that
was
if
it
you
red?
look at and if you look at the picture of Bradis that I have, the young one, people say, why do his eyes look like that? They have two eyelids. Okay. Yeah, they have one outside eyelid, and then they have a nictitating membrane that goes over, like an alligator,
They're like sharks.
Yeah, like a shark. Okay. So
sharks.
You can actually see it.
I don't know if that makes me feel better or not, Kat.
Makes it more difficult to determine. But what Kat's saying is, in general, unless you've got like maybe lava tubes in your area or something where you know for a fact that there's a good chance they could be living underground a lot, and you see something with red glowing eyes, it's either really mad at you or it is one of the bad ones that's possessed.
Yeah, I grew up with the stupid little rhyme, you know, that my Uncle Buck gave me when I was just little. You know, he said, "If you see red, you're dead. Get out of there."
Right.
You know,
right.
and that's I've always kept that.
Totally backing Kat up on this one is just about everything I've heard from every single native tribe that I've had any information come to me from, and that's that stay away from the ones with the red eyes. There's two kinds out there, and if you see the regular ones, they're okay, and if you see the ones with the red glowing eyes, they're not okay. Get out of there.
Get out.
And I've also heard that if you see the red ones, you need to boogie too, because they got a bad attitude.
Right.
The red hair?
It's a regular Bigfoot that's not possessed or something.
The one with the red hair.
The red hair.
Yeah, red hair is I've come to the conclusion that they are just a different branch, than...
Different gene pool.
Than what
will you find
the other ones are.
Within a regular troop, will they, occasionally breed a red one like that?
Yeah, remember I had explained that my alpha male Kiosa had Wild Woman, and she was from outside his group. She was red as red gets.
Again, well, she's from outside the group, so you don't know for sure that she was from the same sort of gene pool. She could have been a sub-variety that just went, we'll put up with her for a while, and then she'd prove to be too crazy.
No, the way that I perceived it was that she was from a different tribe, and they knew which tribe she was from.
Okay.
She was kind of like a mediator gift, between the two, and it didn't work out. She came with a young male, and those two raised holy havoc within the group. It got to the point where my group couldn't handle her, and I'm not sure to this day whether they put her out or whether she left of her own volition.
Well, I'll tell you what, the craziest video I've ever seen, I've seen several videos of the red ones, and they've got the muscle tone and the crazy attitude and the wild as a March hare and antagonistic and they're like, what is it? They're like they're like Hunter Thompson in Where the Buffalo Roam. I'm not going to be satisfied to gnaw on your head with your skull with my very own teeth.
Well, interestingly enough, now we got all the legends of the red-haired giants that were on the continent a long time ago. And have been, inbreeding there. And again, that's part of the theory that me and Kat were talking about, that there's this weird genetic thing that expresses itself every so often that makes these mountain giants, they're just from regular Bigfoot stock, and all of a sudden one of the kids will be mutant and turn into something like this. And it could be the same thing with the red ones. It's just like something that doesn't get expressed that often in their gene pool. And when it does, it's like, oh great, we got one of those crazy red-haired ones that we got to deal with.
See, Kat, I want to ask you a question, because and I think it's appropriate, because I've said some things the gene pool and that the 800-pound gorilla in the room was the fact that there's the graves of 20,000 or so giants that they've already discovered that we've kind of heard about through the press, old newspaper clippings, etc. And the giants that came up in the Grand Canyon, and the giants that in Upper Appalachian Plateau in New England, and etc. And they found some 9-footers here in graves in Oklahoma at Spiral Mound about 2 to 3 years ago. And that we got the Bigfoot, we got the timber giants, we got these things, and to think that the two are unrelated, to me, and that the Sasquatch are a worldwide phenomena of one type or another, and that the giants were a worldwide phenomena of one type or another. That to say that the two gene pools are unrelated, or that there's the two don't have anything to do with one another, it's just a coincidence. To me, I don't believe in coincidences.
Right, I don't either. There's no such thing as coincidence. No.
I personally think that there's a connection between the two. And the gene pool.
I agree, and I do agree with that, because there has to be some sort of connection, because it relates back to, it's just that Duke and I come to the conclusion that at some point, every now and then, one evolves into what is called a troll or a mountain giant. We're not sure which. So it would make perfect sense that they're compatible. Their genes are compatible to cross mates,
Everyone, safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck, would you? And for God's sake, whatever you do, do not hug the Wookiee.